Hello there, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Your headlines in the southeast this Wednesday evening. The Brighton aid worker desperately trying to get Ukrainian orphans to England, and why some are choosing to go back to the conflict zone.
I have a newborn child, and with these old people we come from Lviv, from Ukraine, to this place, and we hope that we can go to the England. But now we have the 1st of June and we're so tired.
Travel misery for pensioners from Kent who say they were left stranded when their holiday plans went wrong. We'll have the latest from Gatwick.
And EasyJet just abandoned us. It was horrendous.
Also tonight, raising a glass to Her Majesty, the amazing Coronation archive from Sussex, as we get ready to do the same 70 years on.
And with a bumper Jubilee weekend ahead, will the weather hold for all those street parties? I'll tell you all about it later.
Good evening. Sussex charity founder Sally Becker is calling on the British government to let her act as a group sponsor to allow 150 Ukrainian refugees, mainly children, to reach safety in the UK.
She became known as the Angel of Mostar and has been rescuing children from conflict zones for more than 30 years. But now in Eastern Europe, Sally says she's been blocked by the British government from helping a new group.
In a letter this week, Boris Johnson said the children of Ukraine would not be forgotten. Now, Sally Becker from Brighton wants the Prime Minister to honour his promise. Sarah Saunders travelled to Warsaw in Poland and sent this report.
Outside the Warsaw refugee centre where they're staying, Sally Becker and her daughter Billy meet up with some of the children and families that escape war zones in the Ukraine with her help. There are tears. Many of this group are traumatised and in need of a safe haven, and Sally represents hope. She's trying to bring them as a group to the UK, but says she's been repeatedly blocked by government red tape. And without a place to go, many are feeling desperate.
Я хотіла би попросити допомоги нам.
She say, help us, please.
Мені здається, що ми звідси вже нікуди не виїдемо.
They thinking that nobody help, nobody.
Близлежащие села просто снесены, сожжены.
Izum, it's everything like fire. They didn't have any nothing, just like everything clean, gone.
И тоже вот как бы родины и назад, даже мы не знаем.
Family, and we didn't have any home where we need to go.
I went in to bring them out of the battle, but the battle actually began when I brought them out.
Sally evacuated the groups with the support of the Ukraine government. Many of them are orphans travelling with legal guardians. She's working to organise somewhere the group can stay together in the UK. And the Sussex charity founder wants approval to act as a sponsor for all of them.
Why do these people need to come into the UK as a group?
Because basically the Homes for Ukraine scheme, it's already flawed anyway. There's such a backlog. But for these people, it just wouldn't work. The families are too big. There are too many children. Some of them, there's a pastor with 10 children. There's no way that anyone could house them. So this was the only option, really. And now that we've been told it's not possible, I'm going back home and I'm going to fight for them. And I just hope the government sees sense and will allow them in. I promise I'll come back in a week, maximum.
But while they hope for news, waiting is taking its toll. The group have been moved repeatedly, staying dozens to a room in a previous refugee centre in Warsaw. Some of the children have become sick. Alina's daughter is 1 month old. She spent most of her young life trying to reach safety in the UK. But trapped in limbo, her mother is among those who've made a heart-wrenching decision to return to the Ukrainian conflict zone.
And I have a newborn child, and with these old people we come from Lviv, from Ukraine, to this place, and we hope that we can go to the England. But now we have the 1st of June. It's the 3rd weeks that we wait, and we're so tired.
The Home Office says families may enter the UK using the Homes for Ukraine sponsorship scheme. But with some Ukrainian refugees waiting in Poland for visas for weeks on end, there's little faith or understanding of that programme among this group.
One family to one family. Why is that not working?
We didn't have any sponsors, they say. We didn't know nobody.
The government's understood to be concerned about providing proper support and care to large groups of children brought to one place together in the UK. In a statement, they told us, in many cases it's more appropriate for children caught up in Putin's barbaric war to remain in the region near Ukraine, where they may still have family connections and where the language and culture may be more familiar.
The families are absolutely amazing. They are so brave and they trust so much in my mum, which is so amazing to see, because currently we haven't had any great news, as you know, but the families are so strong together, and this is why it's important that we get the group visa.
The Home Office said it's working with Polish authorities to help gain access to necessary care and support for these children in Poland. For this group, having left the war zone, the exhausting fight to find a safe haven has begun. Sarah Saunders, ITV News, Warsaw.
And that's a story we will continue to follow. Remember, you can find more on today's top stories from right across the southeast on our website, itv.com/Meridian.
The Home Office says the first flights to Rwanda carrying people who've crossed the Channel illegally are to leave on the 14th of June. Officials have started to issue migrants who've made the journey to the south coast in small boats notices informing them of who will be on the first plane.
East Sussex County Council says it did not remove tributes left for a man in Peacehaven. They disappeared from the scene of the crash on the A259 where Arthur Holscher-Ermert died. He was hit by an unmarked police car in April.
Kent's Police Commissioner Matthew Scott says a new recruitment drive by the Metropolitan Police is selfish and has urged them to withdraw a bonus payment designed to tempt officers from other forces. The Met is offering some officers a one-off bonus of £5,000 if they transfer. All police forces are recruiting to meet the government's target of 20,000 additional police officers by next March.
If you are a Kent officer, you could get £5,000 for crossing the border into the Met, as well as getting an increase in your allowances. So you get an extra £4,000 a year on top of that. So the financial incentive, as well as subsidised and free travel, is really attractive, particularly when we're in a cost of living crisis. That's why this offer is so unfair on Kent.
There's been more travel misery. Airports and seaports have continued to experience congestion and delays.
Well, at one point, a lorry overturned in Operation Brock on the coastbound route to Dover. Passengers at Gatwick have been exasperated at their delays. And one tour organiser from Kent told us of the chaos she's witnessed. Let's go to Joe Coshin, who's at Gatwick for us this evening. Joe, it's a pretty miserable situation for travellers and more delays today.
Yes, absolutely, Matt. Another chaotic day, really, at Gatwick Airport. At least 31 flights cancelled by EasyJet on what is a seventh day of disruption here. Just to put that into perspective, that's around 4% of flights that take off here today. But actually, there's still hundreds of passengers affected. Now, these were some of the pictures of the queues at passport control earlier on, and you could probably grin and bear those as long as you knew you were getting on a flight fairly soon. The problem is many were stuck with delays. Others had turned up early to try and beat those queues and were told they were too early to check in their bags. And two passengers we spoke to, Ebru and Ramona, had just had their flight cancelled to Egypt as they got to their gate.
Basically, we were going to fly to Egypt. We got to boarding and we were about just to get into the plane, and then they said it's cancelled because of shortage of staff, so they stopped work like too many hours.
2 hours delayed so far.
Not too bothered about the 2 hours because we were expecting it to be a long time, but we don't want it to be any longer.
Are you worried about it being cancelled,
yes,
potentially?
We're worried about it being cancelled. I don't think it would be normal if we weren't.
The flight's at 6 o'clock, so we tried to get a bit early than we're supposed to be. Tried to check out, they said no, it's early, so about an hour waiting.
Hoping you're not delayed?
No, hoping you're not delayed, yeah, exactly.
Well, the delays, the cancellations, the queues are being blamed on a shortage of staff in the aviation industry, but it's been a difficult week for some airlines. Eileen Booker from Blee near Canterbury organised a trip to the Isle of Man for her and 50-odd pensioners. They were up in the air on the EasyJet flights when they were told they couldn't land because of low clouds. They returned back to Gatwick and left stranded. Here's what she told us earlier.
It was awful for them. I had quite a few people with sticks. People were distressed. People had made onward arrangements Thursday night for families to collect them. Here they all were frantically. Some hadn't even got mobile phones. We had to ring people. Our driver dropped quite a few people off, which he wouldn't normally do because of it was so late at night. Rearrangements had to be made for collecting people. It was just chaotic. And EasyJet just abandoned us. It was horrendous.
Well, EasyJet have apologised to Miss Booker and since speaking to ITV, Meridian have promised refunds for the whole group.
Well, Joe, it's a pretty desperate situation, particularly ahead of the bank holiday weekend. That's the situation at the airport. What about the port?
Well, that's it. The impacts on the port are quite spare at the moment. If you take a look at some of these pictures from lunchtime, you can see really long queues from freight mostly today, maybe trying to beat the rush before the bank holiday weekend when all the passengers trying to go on their holidays join in those queues. But that is the concern, that actually the cancellations here at Gatwick are going to have a knock-on effect in Kent, and some hopping in their cars trying to make an impromptu trip to the port to get a ticket there. But Toby Howe from the Kent Resilience Forum says it's going to put more pressure on an already struggling traffic system in Kent.
I mean, since we've left the EU, really, there are more checks at the ports. So even just having to now look at your passport, have to stamp your passport, that takes enough time. So when you've got that quantity of traffic, it just adds to those delays. So we're still trying to really get to grips with what that overall impact is for those customs checks and how we can manage the traffic better.
Concern then from Toby Howe about the impacts on Kent. This was meant to be the calm before the storm, before the 4-day weekend. But if the disruption today here at Gatwick and here at the port is anything to go by, you can probably expect more delays than cancellations over the next few days.
Yes, Joe, that is the sad reality, but thank you very much indeed for the time being.
It's often said we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Violence, intimidation, coercive control. That is the reality of domestic abuse.
Well, for some, the abuse comes from their own children. It's thought to affect around 1 in 10 families, but despite that, many struggle to find help and support.
Well, a number of parents have been sharing their experiences with our reporter Lauren Hall. We're protecting the identities of all those featured in tonight's report, and a warning, you may find their stories upsetting.
I'm covered in bruises daily.
During the pandemic, my son couldn't cope and started hitting me.
I love my child as much as you love yours, but I also hate what they do.
I feel completely trapped in my own four walls, in constant fear of being hit, kicked, slapped, punched, shoved or bitten.
It's like being held hostage, treading on eggshells all the time, fearful of what she'll do next.
This is what parents told us about the abuse they face from their own children. One mother says she's often attacked by her son, who's 11.
As he's got older, I've seen a real increase in violent and challenging behaviour, and that's towards myself, and also he has a younger sister as well. It's really very much like living in a domestic violent relationship, but with somebody that you can't actually leave.
So how violent can he be towards you?
Very. This is something that happened to me at the weekend.
How often does that sort of thing happen?
That can happen sometimes once a week, but smaller things, most days.
It's more common than you'd think, according to Dr. Laura Tinkle, a psychologist based in Sussex.
I think there's been a huge rise, and in my clinic I've seen a huge increase in anxiety-based difficulties. So, the loss of the structure, the predictability, the routine, all of that has impacted on children alongside the stresses that their parents are managing. So, yeah, it's a real crisis point for families at the moment.
It's estimated as many as 1 in 10 families face this type of abuse. A recent survey of parents who've experienced it found many had reached out for help, but 2/3 felt they'd not been able to get the support they needed.
Parents often find themselves blamed and shamed for
enabling their children's abusive behaviours, especially when they continue to support their children when they grow older. So it's essentially a lose-lose situation for parents, because they often get that blaming language when they try to get help.
A number of parents told us they hear it all too often.
The stigma needs to go. Children are very capable of holding a knife up to your throat, of threatening to kill you, of making you barricade yourself in your own room for hours and hours on end for your own safety. This does happen. This is happening, and it happened to me.
This mother, who doesn't want to be identified, faced years of abuse from her teenage daughter. A few weeks ago, it got so bad her daughter moved out, and they're no longer in contact with each other.
It was either I ended up in some form of mental health institution or I ended up in a box. So for my own safety, she's gone.
And how do you feel about that, not having contact with your own daughter?
This is going to sound really horrible. I very much felt like I was in a prison. Now I feel that prison sentence is over and I feel free.
It's not often talked about, but it's clear this type of abuse is happening in many families. Those we've spoken to say they may not be able to escape it, but they should be able to escape judgment when they seek help. Lauren Hall, ITV News.
Now you're watching ITV News Meridian. Coming up on our programme.
Patients at a hospice in Kent working with staff and musicians to compose and perform a special song in honour of the Queen.
And the Jubilee weekend is, of course, nearly upon us, but will the weather hold? I'll be back shortly with all the details.
More on all of our stories, of course, on the website. There's the address, itv.com/Meridian. And as ever, don't forget to follow us on social media.
And the ITV Evening News continues here at 6:30. Here's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up, I'll be live from Buckingham Palace with just hours to go before the bumper bank holiday. Final preparations are underway for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations, with events going on across the country to bring communities together. Well, I will be here with that and much more of the rest of the day's news at 6:30.
Well, that coming up shortly, of course. Well, the South East is gearing up to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, marking the 70th year of Her Majesty's reign.
Kent is expected to break a number of records with the largest number of street parties, almost 600. Tomorrow, the county will light the highest number of beacons of any in the country, 129 in total.
Well, life was, of course, very different when the young Elizabeth came to the throne, as can be seen from home movies taken during her coronation, as Derek Johnson explains.
Children in Burgess Hill hold up their coronation mugs. This amateur film captures in colour celebrations in the Sussex town when the Queen came to the throne in 1953.
The 9 processions which accompanied the guests of the Abbey join into one enormous column to advance before Her Majesty on the journey back to the palace.
The official newsreels in black and white show the pomp and ceremony in London, with thousands lining the streets. Joyce Russell and William Newnham were both in the capital back then. Like the Queen, they're in their 90s now. They live at this nursing home, where residents have put up flags and photos.
Oh, very good, yeah. Everybody was happy. Yes. Everybody was laughing and joking. Been through the war, and it was different. It was cheered us up.
I think everybody was very chatty, and you go into a pub and everybody else was chatting to everybody else. Far more friendly than they are now.
And the 1950s were a different world. Here at this Living History Museum, there are displays showing just how different. Rationing was still in place.
Well, I think household life was a little more family orientated than it is today. People would still live near extended families. People wouldn't be split up so much in different parts of the country. Obviously, technology really was very different. We didn't have all modern things like the internet. A lot of people were still growing food in their gardens. Rationing was still in place and price controls were still in place. But it was still really difficult to import enough food into the country to grow enough food for the country. So people were struggling.
Not that you sense that from these films. In Lindfield in Sussex, there are only happy faces. The feeling people were genuinely pleased to welcome a young queen into their lives.
It really was a celebration, not just of the coronation, but celebration of community life and, of course, of being British. There was a sense of a changing Britain. A new queen, 27 years of age, referred to as the Elizabethan age, and of course there was new technology too.
The jewelled sword of state is presented to the Queen by the Archbishop.
Many people have memory on that special day, the 2nd of June, watching television for the first time. There are descriptions of one television on the street and friends and neighbours coming in to that house to catch a glimpse of the coronation.
Interest went well beyond this country. Bert Williams has met the Queen several times and has an MBE for work researching Brighton's black history. As a schoolboy in the West Indies, he says the monarchy was part of his upbringing.
I know in Jamaica in our school we had a photograph of them in the school of the Queen and the Duke. High regards for her. I served her in the Royal Air Force and I've always had high regards for the royal family and what it stands for.
This seems so long ago, and few now remember a time when we didn't have a queen. This week, the nation once again salutes their monarch, the most famous woman in the world. Derek Johnson, ITV News.
Yeah, we are living through this really special time, aren't we? Now, all of the many Jubilee events taking place across our region, this one we're going to tell you about must be something quite special.
Yes, patients at a hospice in Kent have worked with staff and musicians to compose and perform a special song in honour of Her Majesty.
And the hospice itself has earned a place in the official album commemorating the Jubilee pageant, as Malcolm Shaw will now tell us.
Brave and strong. They've called it Light of Love. This song, to celebrate the Jubilee, has been created by patients at Eleanor Hospice in Gravesend. Today it received its first public performance.
It's been nice because it's got everyone joining in together to make the song and we've all got to know one another.
We've written the song and it's turned out really well and put our own music to it.
Made some lovely friends, something to look forward to, and I just think it's amazing what they've all put together.
Staff and patients have been working on the project with professional performers from Live Music Now.
We thought, what better way to celebrate the Jubilee than doing a song created by the patients and performed by the patients at the Jubilee party that we've been planning since February. The Queen is a massive fan of music. She absolutely loves music, and we thought what a great nod to her in the form of music.
Outside the hospice, classic cars help to create the right mood to reflect the Queen's 70 years on the throne, and nurses dressed in 1950s uniforms. Eleanor looks after patients mostly in their own homes, but there's also inpatient care when needed.
I might be the oldest inmate. This sort of do today has sort of got our generations together, you know. No, they've been brilliant. They've been very good.
The work the charity does has received royal recognition. It's being featured in the official Platinum Jubilee pageant commemorative album.
This place is full of laughter, happiness, joy. I mean, for us actually it's about giving life. We work with patients when they're being diagnosed and their families throughout their journey, but we're there to give life. We're there to help them make the most of the time that they've got left with us.
Light of Love will be recorded and a professional video created, a lasting tribute to the Queen, but also to all those who worked so hard to create the song. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News, Gravesend.
Nicely done. Well, we've been asking you all day how you're marking the Jubilee weekend. Let's just run through a few thoughts even. Tara Louise from Talhurst in Sussex told us, my son is one of the 1,500 soldiers trooping the colour. I'll be a very proud mum, she says, watching him from home. Good luck.
Shirley McCulty from Eastbourne has her garden already and she sent us this picture.
I was watching the picture. It was very nice. Chris Hersel from Maidstone says, I'm working. Don't forget, some people will still be working, so the rest of you get to enjoy yourselves. Yes, we appreciate it.
And thank you for working.
Yes.
And Diana Stacey Hill has shared her plan, saying, our party that I've been busy organising is going to be amazing. Quiz, raffle, children's zone, can't wait. Apparently, Diana Street is busy putting up the bunting and she is leading the way. Look at this. Photos of how she's decorated her house in red, white and blue to get into the Jubilee spirit. Thank you to everyone for getting in touch.
We are all round to Diana's house for the weekend. Right, let's talk about the weather. Pip joins us in the studio. We'll get to the Jubilee in a moment, but first, a big event in the weather world.
It is a big day for meteorologists. It's first day of meteorological summer, the 1st of June, which of course means time for a look back at spring just gone. So a quick spring roundup. Let's take a look at the stats. Now, we've just had the 5th warmest May on record, and that rounds off the 5th warmest spring on record too. Now, that may surprise some. The highest temperature of the season has been 27.5 Celsius. That was at Heathrow on the 17th of May. Not threatening any records, but for May at least, it's been the nighttime temperatures keeping the average up rather than the daytime. Spring on the whole has also been sunnier and drier than average, but most of that was taken care of with our second sunniest March on record, if you can remember back that far, and also a pretty dry spell through both March and April followed. May, by contrast, a little bit average on both counts, I think.
And you heard about the street parties that our viewers are planning. Come on, they want to know. Good news, bad news?
Oh, a bit of both. So it starts with good news. Thursday, Friday, lots of dry weather, plenty of sunshine, and dare I say temperatures peaking on Friday in the low to mid-20s. But for Saturday and Sunday, it is all still looking pretty uncertain. An increasing risk of showers, maybe the odd rumble of thunder, and feeling cooler with it too. But the details still to be tied down. We will, of course, keep you posted. But I would say quintessentially British weather.
It'll be fine.
We'll take that. We'll just get gazebos.
Yeah.
Here's Philippa now with your forecast.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Well, the Jubilee weekend is very nearly upon us and somewhat mixed fortunes in the forecast weather-wise. So that dry, bright and fairly warm start. But I think as we head through Saturday and Sunday, it does look a little more changeable, increasingly becoming showery. And with the arrival of the showers, it will start to feel a little cooler once again as well. So this is the pressure pattern taking us through the Jubilee weekend. High pressure in charge through Thursday and Friday. But then Saturday and Sunday, we'll start to see various little features running up from the south. And these will provide the focus for those showery outbreaks. But out there at the moment, it looks very quiet. So today's showers have now largely faded. And for the rest of this evening and tonight, it stays dry and fairly clear. With clear skies and light winds, though, we could well see some shallow patches of mist and fog developing. And whilst temperatures in towns and cities generally holding up around 6, 7, 8 Celsius, some rural spots could dip just a touch lower. So a fairly fresh start to the day tomorrow. A little murky in a few places first thing, but any mist and fog will soon disperse. And for the rest of the day, it looks pretty quiet. Lots of dry weather, plenty of sunshine, perhaps some high clouds, turning that sunshine hazy from time to time. But in the sunshine, temperatures doing a little better than recent days, peaking inland around 20, perhaps locally 21 Celsius. High tides for tomorrow then for Sheerness just before 3 in the morning and then 10 past 3 in the afternoon. And beyond that, Thursday night into Friday, it remains pretty quiet. You may notice just a few little speckles running up from the south there. The outside chance of 1 or 2 showers, but Friday itself generally dawning on a dry and bright note. So Friday looking pretty decent, but it's as we head through Saturday and Sunday, we see that increasing risk of showers and feeling cooler too.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello, summer. Piri sponsors ITV Pollen Count.
Well, grass pollen will be taking hold over the next few days. Levels expected to be high with dry and fine conditions, falling to moderate with more in the way of showers come the early parts of the weekend.
Stay with us because we're at Buckingham Palace next in the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
We're going to have bulletins across the weekend, of course. We're back at the usual time of 6 on Monday. For those not working, that's just for Chris, who wrote in to point it out. Enjoy the celebrations with the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Have a fantastic weekend. Bye-bye.
I'll have your late update.